The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. And boy, today is there some derivation. I'm Jeff Haecker, and joining me today on an adventure are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hello there, Jeff.
And Patrick Mason. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Jeff.
And Rob Leonardi. Hey, Rob.
Blunt to the knives, bend the fork. No, all right. Sorry. Hello.
Exactly. All right. And I believe you have all signed the contract. For your hospitality, our sincerest thanks. And for your offer of professional assistance, our grateful acceptance. Terms, cash on delivery of the contractual reference of the elf and dwarf romance, up to and not exceeding 1/4 of total profits, if any. So
the funeral arrangements are really nice. Really nice.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we don't have that on a podcast here. So, all right. And be sure,
especially if there's incineration.
Yeah. All right. And be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on X, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt at sqpn.com/merch. And it's a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. All right. And before we get started, we had a fair bit of news of various Tolkien things. So the first one was the Tales of the Shire game came out, and apparently it's not very well received. I don't know if any of y'all have played it.
That's a shame, because I was looking forward to that. Yeah, I hadn't heard any of the reviews, though.
Is it a video game?
Yeah, it's like Animal Crossing, but the Shire, basically. It's one of those games that, like, you would never see me again if I started playing it, because that's my kind of game, to just build a little town and, like, do stuff, and it's the Shire, so...
Yeah, so I don't know if I guess it sounds like Pat hasn't played it. Rob, I don't know if you've played it or heard anything about it.
Not at all.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess that's all that I have.
Of the Shire game, I thought this was like a Lord of the Rings Hunger Games mashup. And I was like, what?
Yeah, well, if anyone out there is listening and you played the game, definitely send us in your review of it. But
yeah,
apparently it's not very good. I think it's better received than the Gollum game from a couple of years ago. That was just apparently really bad.
Well, that's a low bar.
Yeah. So it's at least better than that. But the other bit of news that's I think that's came out is that the Rings of Power season 3 is now in production. I believe it was at the end of July is when they kind of officially announced it was in production. So depending on the time frame, we'll probably in 2 years we'll see it. Hopefully they do get some writing and filming back to back so it doesn't take as long between seasons. But and then the other big news, I guess, and kind of relevant to today, is the hunt for Gollum. There are some sources I've read saying that Elijah Wood and Ian McKellen will be back.
Could be back. That's what I heard. Yeah.
I saw a video of Ian doing in a panel saying that Frodo and Gandalf and Aragorn are back.
Yeah, he said the characters are back, but not necessarily the actors. So, and then similarly along those lines, Viggo Mortensen recently said that he would be interested in coming back. So, I don't I don't know if we'll see a DH Viggo Mortensen, or if they'll, I hope if he does come back, they only use him as a frame narrative type of thing and have him kind of like the move.
Just
what we're talking
carrying
about
the bag of Gollum.
Yeah.
like in the fan film. That was great.
Yep.
Yeah. But I don't know. For me, I hope they cast a younger actor for the main part of it, but we'll see. And one other thing I was thinking of that I want to just put out there is I hope they bring Elrond's sons into it and more of the Rangers, because we've not seen Elrond's sons in anything, and I don't believe we've even seen any other of the Dunedain Rangers.
No, they could have Halbarad in it too.
Yeah,
that guy who is Aragorn's friend in the books.
Yeah, so they could do. Hopefully, they do that. But anyway, that's all the news that I saw. But speaking of movies that de-aged and were perhaps too long, in honor of Bilbo's birthday, we are celebrating Hobbit Day and fulfilling a long-promised and long-awaited podcast over The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, which is part 1 of, unfortunately, 3 Hobbit movies.
Good part.
Right.
It's all downhill after this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
All underhill, I guess.
Oh, snap.
All right. So today we're talking about the best one of the bunch, I think, The Unexpected Journey. So I'll give the plot summary and we can then discuss. So Bilbo Baggins is living a quiet life in his cozy hobbit hole when the troublemaking wizard Gandalf arrives. He is visited by many dwarves led by Thorin Oakenshield and is forced to host a dinner party. He learns they seek to reclaim their lost home of Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, which was taken by the dragon Smaug. He decides to accompany them, and he helps save them from trolls. Gandalf's fellow wizard Radagast tells him of the encounter with the necromancer who is corrupting the forest. They are chased by orcs led by Azog, and Gandalf leads the company to Rivendell, and the White Council meets to discuss the signs of the possible return of Sauron. Elrond and Saruman, who unfortunately, or at least Saruman unfortunately appearing here, doubt the return, but with Galadriel, who's also not in the book, encouragement, Gandalf from Angmar's sword as proof that he also had secretly sent Thorin and company ahead. The quest continues, and they travel to the Misty Mountains, but are captured by goblins. But Bilbo falls down a chasm and is separated from them. He finds a ring and meets Gollum. They play a riddle game for the chance for Bilbo to be let out, but after the final question, Gollum believes Bilbo lied and has the ring. And Bilbo finds out the ring turns him invisible, and he escapes, also sparing Gollum. And then Gandalf arrives to save the dwarves from the goblins, and they escape and are reunited with Bilbo. When asked why he returned, Bilbo tells Thorin he wants to help them get their home back. Azog then also returns and corners the company, but they escape with the help of the eagles, and they are left outside of Mirkwood and see the Lonely Mountain far in the distance. And the closing shot is a thrush cracking a snail against the mountain and the sleeping dragon awakening. All right, so...
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so, to be continued. So...
Doom.
All right. All right, so as we started our discussion, I thought I'd just ask how well did you... I guess we can say what was your impression of this movie, and how well do you feel it adopted the first part of the book? So, Thomas, I'll start with you. What's your impression and feelings on this? Just overall feelings on this movie.
Well, this was the first time I had watched it in a long time, and man, I forgot how entertaining this movie is. I forgot how good it was. I feel like it. I have nitpicks with it. But I think overall, it does a really good job of taking the lighter tone of Tolkien's original Hobbit book and fitting that into the sort of grandiose and solemn Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings universe. I feel it does a very good job of that. And yeah, it's just entertaining throughout. I really like it. I feel like if my memory of the other two films serves, if they had been more like this one, I would have better feelings about the trilogy overall. But yeah, I would rewatch this one again if someone just said, "Hey, you want to watch the first Hobbit movie?" I'd be like, "Sure." I remember not enjoying the extended edition as much. I feel like it added some superfluous stuff that was rightly cut. But in terms of the theatrical cut, I'm like, yeah, just a great entertaining movie, and I thought a pretty fair adaptation of the sort of first half of The Hobbit. I felt that most of the sort of plot changes, like in the terms of how scenes play out, made sense for the movie version. Like I felt like the trolls having a talking purse wouldn't have made sense, you know, just as a throwaway example. But like, yeah, so yeah, just great overall. Best of the Hobbit movies.
Nice. And what about you, Rob?
I really love this one. This is, as Thomas was saying, this is far the best of the trilogy, I think. In fact, I think it might even be probably the second, maybe third best of all of the Peter Jackson films, I think. And I think they did he really did a good job bringing the book to life and setting up what should have been better movies in the future, especially taking into account the appendices and adding some of that stuff in of like what was Gandalf doing at certain points with the White Council, because it kind of plays in the appendices within this context, because he just kind of disappears once in a while, and it's like, okay. So in terms of like, oh, well, that explains where he was. And so I think they did a really good job doing this. This was the first movie I remember watching in the theaters, and I loved it then. And just even watching it again, I loved it now. Yeah. And I especially love the two memorable songs, because there's only of all the songs, especially in the extended edition, there's only two that are really memorable. So
nice. And what about you, Pat?
So I want to start by asking, I watched the extended edition. Which version did y'all watch?
Theatrical.
Extended.
How long was the theatrical?
Extended.
How long was the theatrical?
How long was the theatrical?
Oh, I don't remember.
So what I watched was like 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like it was.
The extended version, at least according to what, you know, the little play thing on the thing, said 3 hours exactly. And so I think the extended edition added like 13 minutes to the theatrical version. I think specifically it added a couple of scenes in Rivendell, and then it added the Goblin King singing a little bit.
I feel like I remember that from the.
Well, I think
the theatrical, but
I think it more of it, like more singing.
Okay.
Curious.
Google says the theatrical runtime was 2 hours and 49 minutes.
Okay. So
the reason why I didn't remember is because I had to keep pausing the movie to go and attend to other stuff. So
yes, me too.
Yeah.
The 3 hour movie took me 6 hours to watch because I had kids watching it with me.
Yeah. So, ridiculously long movie. Because I'm from the olden days when movies were 2 hours and then you stopped.
And if they were longer, they had an intermission, like Gettysburg.
Yeah.
I believe that when the first Lord of the Rings came out, it was still one of those ones that came out on VHS and DVD, and I think it was two
tapes. Two tapes.
And I remember that, and I think this would have been just like that, but more technology now. Now it's just one Blu-ray disc.
Even the DVDs, there were two of them. At least for the extended. Yeah. I actually have a whole set that's the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, both extended editions, all in one pack. And it has all these special features. So in the one pack of the Blu-ray for The Unexpected Journey, there's 4 discs, which includes the movie, the special features, and then 2 what they call the appendices, which is kind of like the filming of everything. all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. So I agree. I think as far as the films go, it was probably the best of the three. I think, when you start filling in gaps in a movie, right? Because, all right, where did Gandalf go? Okay, well, I want to show that on screen. Well, I'm going to fill that gap in. Okay, well, how did this person get to where they are here in this part of the story? Okay, well, I'm going to fill that gap in. You can start to overrun a little bit. And I think that's kind of what happened with the whole, is it Azog or Azoz?
Yeah.
I say Azog, but yeah. Tomato, I guess.
Right. But what I will say, it felt genuine enough, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a way to do that which is terrible, and there's a way to do that where you've woven the new thread in amongst the old threads, and it doesn't stand out like a garish glitter purple thread in amongst a red tapestry. It's you took a red thread and you threaded it in, and it works. So I did not find any problems with any of the additions. I absolutely loved Goblin Town. I love the interaction between Bilbo and Gollum. It was if you were gonna take my imagination and throw it up on the screen, pretty much throughout the entire course of this movie is what I got, which makes me happy. I don't know if that's makes it objectively a good movie, but then again, I don't care. I'm a subjective human being. So, definitely my favorite of the Hobbit movies. And I liked all the characterizations of the characters. Thorin was Thorin. Bilbo was Bilbo.
Bilbo was perfect. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have liked a little more dwarf characterization, but that would have been hard given that you were already at like 3 hours of runtime. But I feel like in The Hobbit, you get a little more knowledge of who's who and who's what. But it overall, solid effort.
Yeah. I liked Balin a lot, too, of the sort of ensemble dwarves. I think both in the book and in this movie, he comes out the strongest of like the pack, I think.
Yeah, and just throw on my impressions. Overall, I really like this one, and I would agree it is the best of the trilogy. But I have notes on here to talk various things. But yeah, the characterization I thought was really, really good for almost everyone, if not everyone. There may be some questionable choices with Radagast in this movie.
I didn't mind it as much as I did the first time. I was just like, okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad. So
they had to throw the doctor in there somewhere.
Yeah, but overall, overall, I did really like it. Again, and this we can touch a little on the production history of it, because they originally wasn't going to be Peter Jackson; it was going to be Guillermo del Toro.
Yes,
and it was also going to be 2 movies instead of 3, or at least they eventually decided to make it 2 because 1 wasn't going to be enough. And then as the studios got involved and as Guillermo del Toro exited, they thought, the studio thought, we can maximize profit and make a third movie.
Yeah,
and that's where we get some of the unfortunate garish purple threads, as Pat was just talking about into the next 2 movies. But
and then Peter Jackson, before filming, ended up having like a really bad stomach ulcer, and they thought it was a heart attack, and it was just not good for him. But he was able to get some surgery and get back on his feet for it. So
yeah, but overall, this one I did really, it is really good, and it really does, I think, capture the book better than the others do. So, but yeah, we can kind of get into...
Is it a better Hobbit movie than the animated one?
Considering I fell asleep during the animated one, I would say yes.
Yeah, I've seen the animated when we did the podcast, but it's not one. Right. But it's not one that I never saw it as a kid, so I don't really have a tie to it. But this one, they did really have a really good cast in this. Like we were saying, Martin Freeman is Bilbo.
Martin Freeman's
just
great,
really nailed it, and it really felt like a young Ian Holmes, who was Bilbo from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which we did see him in a flashback to this in the Lord of the Rings movies, but I thought Martin Freeman did a great job. So yeah, I guess we can kind of start with Bilbo, about how he was. I couldn't remember if this was in the theatrical or extended, but we do get a little shot of Gandalf or Bilbo seeing Gandalf as a young kid. Gandalf seeing Bilbo as a young kid, where he's, playing and pretending to be, fight goblins and orcs or something. He's got the little sword, and he's got that spirit of adventure. But then Gandalf comes upon him, and like a lot of us, unfortunately, that as the real world happens, it can turn a curious child or into a boring adult whose only occupation is with he's not really working, but
because he's independently wealthy, I guess. Yeah.
So
a gentle hobbit, as they say.
Yeah. So what did y'all think of Bilbo's kind of overall portrayal in this movie?
Exactly as I pictured it in the books. And Bilbo might be my favorite hobbit anyway from the books, and to see Martin Freeman just completely capture this character. And just his little, the little things of annoyance, and awkwardness that he does throughout the movie are just perfect. It's Bilbo. It's Bilbo brought right off the page. And yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better portrayal of this character.
Yeah. Bilbo's kind of this caricature of British gentry. And Martin Freeman is he just does that so well. And he doesn't really have to try he just doesn't have to go back that far in his acting to pull that forward and just use that. And so because the Hobbits have always been this sort of strange little country that's in the middle of this real fantasy land. And yes, they're fantasy creatures because they're short, but they're basically, Englishmen. They're basically British.
They're just British, Scottish.
Yeah, and Scottish. Yeah. And so, his portrayal of that through Bilbo is pretty fantastic. And I think that's, a lot of that is sort of swept up in Tolkien's own kind of life as sort of this, living as a British citizen, and then just getting swept up in his own adventure as a young man and going off to war and coming back and seeing what there's a line I don't remember which book it's from, but they talk about that phenomenon where you had when World War I started, and all the veterans from the former colonial wars kind of just come in from their shopkeeping and their whatnot, and they walk in wearing aprons and work trousers, and they come out in full-blown uniforms and look, they're ready to go to war. And it's like this overnight transformation. And you have this kind of this instilled thing that Gandalf sees in Bilbo. And I love that scene where he turns the room dark. And, the portrayal of that is, if I say he's a burglar, then he's a burglar, because in the book, it's just black and white on the page. You have to imagine how that plays out. And I really kind of like that version of it where they're all arguing about it. And he's he uses I'm not a peddler of minor tricks, and he uses a minor trick by making the house dark.
Right. Yeah.
and does that in that scene. I always like it when Gandalf kind of reminds everybody that, yes, he actually is a wizard.
I love Bilbo in this and in the book because he reacts in a lot of ways like I would imagine I myself would react in a similar situation. I love fantasy stuff, but if I was presented with this in real life, I would be like, nope. I'm not doing that, or can I go home now, or just run away? It's so I've always sort of sympathized / identified with Bilbo in that way. And he just, like he says, he loves his books. He likes to sit down in his chair and read and look at maps, and I like to do those things. So it's yeah. And he just captures that brilliantly, and also captures the kind of, as they say in one of the books, that there's a seed of courage hidden in the most plain, stay at home homebody hobbit. So
yeah. I think
really.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think what encapsulates that so well is just when he's sitting down to eat his dinner, and then he hears the knock on the door, and he looks up, and that's my face so many times when
I've done
doing
that.
something.
Yeah.
When I'm doing something at work and I get in and like I'm in the middle of something and I see someone send me an email or a message and I just glare at the computer, or like if I'm at home and my kids are in the other room and I'm like watching TV in the other room, and then I hear them yell my name, yell for dad, and I'm just like, what do you like? What now? Like, just that look of annoyance is so perfect, and yeah, I think that really encapsulates where Bilbo is at the start. Is just he's living his quiet, cozy Hobbit life, and it's a pretty good life. And who among us wouldn't want to live in a cozy Hobbit hole with enough, all the food and drinks and
one of these days we're going to have to talk about the similarities between two of Tolkien's characters, between Bilbo and Niggle in Leaf by Niggle, because they are very similar characters.
Yes.
Who don't like being interrupted and just want to do their thing quietly and not be bothered with people. The classic introvert. Yeah.
Yep. I just read that the other day.
Beautiful story.
Yeah. I think I love Bilbo in this as well. I think he did. Martin Freeman did not Martin Freeman. That's a totally different actor, isn't it? No, that's Martin Lawrence.
Freeman. It
is Martin Freeman. Oh my goodness! Please cut that part out. Martin Freeman.
Martin Lawrence is a very different actor. Not wrong there.
The Morgan Freeman cut of The Hobbit is a very.
All right, let's try that one again.
This is the kind of stuff that makes the show. Don't cut that out.
There's no
right. We're not cutting that out. We're all embarrassed here.
All right. I think Bilbo was really, really very well done. Martin Freeman did a great job encapsulating everything, like you said he did. His looks and demeanor and everything. I even from the very beginning with his exchange with Gandalf. I guess my one nitpick with the movies, and this is probably all of the Hobbit movies in general. I think that they started off really, really great, but then they get less and less wittier. They take a lot of Tolkien built into the book so much wit and so much just greatness in that quick sense of wit that it doesn't translate well. And we'll see that in the next movie when with Beorn and getting all the dwarves to his house. But he does, they do it, but they don't, in the book, he doesn't. In the book, it's done so much better, and I think this starts off on the great foot with the whole good morning. What do you mean? Do you wish me a good morning, or do you mean that it's a good morning whether I want it or not, or perhaps you mean to say that you feel good on this particular morning? Really, really great wit, and it starts off really high and then just kind of goes downhill from here. And But I think that they did a really good job in Bilbo's character itself throughout the books or throughout the movies.
Is he a great wizard, Gandalf, or is he more like you? That line. Yeah. Oh man, that was such a good line.
Yeah. The two Blueses, I'm afraid I have quite forgotten their names because they couldn't use them for legal reasons, so they made it into a joke.
Yeah, and then and so that's because that's how the movie starts, is Gandalf seeing Bilbo, at his house. He's checking the mail and has that good morning conversation, and then he marks the door so that the dwarves know how to find the house. And then, as we were saying, as he's sitting down to dinner, he gets the first knock on the door, and it's Balin, right? I believe,
Dwalin.
Or is it Dwalin? So Dwalin, who comes in and immediately starts asking for dinner, and Bilbo and his good manners can't quite turn him out, and doesn't have the courage to say, no, you can't come in.
I like how they have the dwarf who shows up first is the one who's probably the least like Bilbo.
Yeah, that's true.
Like personality wise, and
then he just goes and sits down and eats his entire meal.
Food. Yeah,
eats his whole dinner and then asks for more. And Bilbo's just sitting there like angry, but British angry.
Right. He's too polite to throw him out, but he's also like inside like a raging volcano.
He likes visitors, but he likes to know them before they arrive.
That was from the books too.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
And then Balin shows up, and then Dwalin and Balin go through his pantry, and then they start talking about what they can eat. And oh no, that cheese is too blue.
That was a very like that harkened back to like older cinema with like the people talking over each other. I liked that scene where, Balin and Dwalin are talking about the food in the pantry, and meanwhile Bilbo's trying to talk to them, but they're not listening to him.
And of course, in a very British way, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And they accept
apology accepted.
Yeah, they accept his apology. Oh, so good. Yeah. I like how they, practically speaking, they eat his entire pantry over the course of that night. And I really think like that has to be somewhere between a quarter and a half of the reason Bilbo goes along, because he's like, well, I moved out of the house home.
I have no more food.
Might as well go on this adventure. I don't have anything to eat for the next month and a half.
Yeah, and then as we were saying, the dwarves arrive, 2 by 2, and I think it's Fili and Kili next, and then
yep.
And then I think the rest, aside from Thorin, just arrive in one big, big pile on the door.
With Gandalf. And that's where the wit starts to deteriorate, because in the book they keep showing up 2 by 2.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I get why they kind of cut that down though, because you're already in a 3-hour movie, and it. And I mean, I would love maybe not a 6-hour version of these Hobbit movies, but I would love more stuff like that where you get expanded into what's actually in the book, like where they are arriving 2 by 2 and you get more of that witty banter. But
I thought
why they edited it down.
I thought the wit started to deteriorate with the croquet joke.
Oh
yeah, I was like, Tolkien would not be happy about that.
Yeah.
That was an off-color joke for the parents watching the movie, and I did not appreciate that in Middle-earth.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then there's they're eating dinner, and then we get to the famous because I believe that the blunt the knives is before Thorin arrives, if I'm not mistaken. Everybody eats dinner and throwing and at least the dwarves like. I wouldn't mind an army of dwarves to help me clean the dishes and clean my house the way that
looked so much fun. Yeah, that looked great.
Very efficient. So, but yeah, then we finally get Thorin arriving after all that. Unless y'all, of course, we can talk further about the song and Blunt the Knives. If y'all want to, because that, of course, I think we were saying is one of the better songs in the movie.
It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and I wish I could just spend the whole time listening to it over and over again. But
I sing it while washing the dishes.
Yeah, because and we were saying they mixed up some of the, of course, as I always say, I'm less familiar with the books than the visual content that we have of these things, but y'all were saying they mixed up some of the verses in that song too.
Yeah, they from the book they took some of the verses and they just changed the order of some of them, so it made a better song.
It still
rather
works.
Than a poem.
Yeah. Right. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was but overall that was the dinner, and that was an entertaining scene because the dwarves are just coming in more and more and just keep eating more and more, and they're ruining his mother's doilies and all his nice things that he cares more about than anything else. So But then we get that kind of dramatic turn when Thorin arrives. So what did y'all think of Thorin's kind of portrayal in this movie? Just kind of generally, because we'll of course talk about it more as we go, but just this is our first impression of him. I don't know what y'all thought of Thorin Oakenshield.
Interesting tidbit, though, I wanted to start off with is that, so if you watch this on Amazon, there'll of course be the little like trivia on the, if you like hover the cursor over the screen or whatever. There was a little bit of trivia about this actor who played Thorin. Apparently his first experience acting was in a stage production of The Hobbit where he played an elf, like an elf in the background. So he came full circle for him playing Thorin Oakenshield. But yeah, I thought he did a great job. They made Thorin a lot younger than he is in the books, but I think it works. And they wanted an Aragorn-esque action hero for this movie, and he still has the bearing of the king under the mountain in exile. So really no complaints about it.
I do wish that they would have aged him a little bit, I would say, but you have dwarves. I think they ran into that problem with the Rings of Power, how long dwarves live versus elves. And how long Aragorn lives versus regular humans. Like they have that same there's that same kind of issue of how exactly is old for a dwarf, because it was 60 years when they left Erebor and now, so he's at least 60. Presumably he was there and he saved Dwalin from being burned up by smog, as we saw in the very beginning of that. And so he's 60 plus what? And how old should that make him? Like, realistically, I think, and especially, going towards the end, looking farsighted here, when he dies, spoilers, sorry, people. What? It's more heart-wrenching because he's so young in this movie, like young looking, than if it was, it's this older guy, he's lived a full life and he's done this thing. Now it's like, but you have so much more potential. So I wish they would have aged him a little bit just to have that kind of more of a settlement, if you will, at the end of the three movies. But I think they did a good job in having that Aragorn type vibe with him.
Yeah, I didn't really bump on the age at all. So, and he does have a little bit white in his beard and hair. So I think they're kind of, because of course his nephews Philly and Keely are also in the company. So he's kind of, that middle-aged, kind of like Aragorn is kind of middle-aged, or, Viggo was kind of middle-aged at that point, slightly under middle-aged, I guess. So yeah, I guess I didn't mind it because they showed his in the flashback at the very beginning, which we didn't talk about at all. They do show, his father and grandfather, or at least his grandfather. So, he's the, you can't have, if you have three like white bearded dwarves, it'd be hard to tell them apart. So I did like that they kind of had all the dwarves look, not all exactly the same. Like Killy and Philly look, and Thorin look kind of almost more human-like, and then you have like Balin and Dwalin, have very unique looks, and the other dwarves do as well. So
I just think that Killy only having like stubble is just disgraceful for a dwarf.
Well, it's not the worst thing to do with that character. So
yeah,
he was going undercover.
See, he already had a thing for elves, as we'll see.
Yes, I caught that in this round. I did write that down.
Yeah, I think that's a good, a good way to put it. They kind of did the same thing with Thorin that they did with Aragorn. Just this kind of the way they did with Frodo, right? In the books, Frodo is the same age as Bilbo when Bilbo goes off on his adventure. And what we get in Lord of the Rings is kind of, almost like a 20-year-old Frodo. this, you get the notion that Bilbo probably something like his 30s or 40s, but like he's really supposed to be in his 50s, and he's supposed to be a little more round. And so is Frodo. They're not supposed to be, heart and hale. There's a reason he looks more like a grocer than a burglar. And some of that's done for looks, and some of that's done for story, right? Aragorn was fundamentally, in my opinion, a different character in the movies than he was in the books. Thorin, I think, still remains fairly close to how he was. I think in the books he's a little more guarded. He's a little more secretive, maybe is the word. But maybe it's just, I'm old and I don't feel like explaining things, or I don't feel like you need to know, kind of a thing. And in this, he strikes me as a lot more headstrong. And again, action hero-y, right? Because we have the whole grudge match going on between him and the white, one-handed orc ward rider. So definitely a different feel to Thorin, but I don't think a different characterization of Thorin.
Yeah.
And then and after we get introduced to him, he's we start to hear the story of what happens, or Bilbo's first hearing the tale of what happened, and they sing the Misty Mountain song, so which we were discussing as well beforehand, that they only do is it the last verse they do, or the first verse they do? Because it's a much longer in the book, y'all were saying.
Yeah. So in the book itself, it is I'm as I'm flipping through the book, 10 stanzas here, and they only do the first one.
Basically,
Travesty.
Travesty.
But at the same time, in the book itself, it actually says talking about Bilbo, as he lay in bed, he could hear Thorin still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him, far over the Misty Mountains cold. And so just the first verse is what's in the book. So it makes sense. Do you want to have all the dwarves singing all 10 stanzas here? There's some really great covers out there by like Peyton Parrish, Jeff Castellucci, great covers of them. But I think even so, it was just very well done with what they did, and I wish they would have done the whole thing just as a extended scene, or at least put it onto the oh my goodness, not the audiobook, but the
soundtrack.
That's the word, soundtrack.
I will say that in the first trailer for this movie that came out, they put them singing the Misty Mountain song over some of the things that were happening in the trailer. When I saw that trailer for the first time, it gave me chills listening to that over the trailer. Yeah,
because because it's not like Star Wars where they can keep making more stuff. It's because there's not an established canon or anything. We were very, we didn't know if we would ever get more than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So when the Hobbit, I don't remember my first reaction, but I probably had a similar one of thinking, okay, this is going to be really cool because now they can. And I wasn't, I was much more Lord of the Rings fan than the Hobbit fan. Back then too, but yeah, it was cool that we're going to get something else, and now we're getting even more. And even though we tease it a lot, with Rings of Power, but
flames across my face.
There's still enjoyment for them. But that's that's a whole other thing. So. Yeah, after because they're before the song, they are basically asking him or telling him he's going to be their burglar, and that he's going to go on this quest. And Bilbo is just completely getting overwhelmed with everything, and has to have a sit down, in his in the rocking chair.
At least he doesn't go into convulsions like in the book. Struck by lightning. But poor Bilbo.
But yeah, he falls asleep with the song, and then he wakes up and everyone's gone, and you can, there's a version of the story where he doesn't go on this quest and stays home, but of course, that wouldn't be any fun. So he
It was all a dream.
Oh gosh, no! Can you imagine?
But I love the scene of him running out of his home, with his pack, and he's got the contract flapping behind as he's carrying it. And he says, "I'm going on an adventure." I use that GIF all the time.
Yes, yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But yeah, and then the quest kind of fully begins. So, I think just for time's sake, there's of course smaller things in between, but I think our first big kind of set piece after he leaves is the trolls. So what did y'all think of the troll scene in this, or the portrayal or adaptation of the troll scene?
I disliked it. I mean, I love the idea of the trolls, and I like. Okay, let me reverse that. I loved it in the movie. Once I read the book, I hated the movie.
Huh.
Because the book made it so much wittier, made it so much better.
That's true.
But the movie itself did do a good job with what it was, and I really loved it in the movie. But again, comparing it to the book, it fell flat.
Yeah, the movie makes a lot of, I'm going to sacrifice these witty moments for a sight gag or for a short gag. So we talked about earlier the dwarves showing up in pairs of twos, and they've all kind of got their own witty thing they're saying in the banter with Bilbo and whatnot. All gets replaced by the sight gag of them all just collapsing in on Bilbo, which is a funny moment, but it's a trade-off, right? What am I going to do with my comedic time here? And you're right. There's a lot of that gets sort of taken away throughout the course of the movies. A lot of the sort of witty, more dry British humor that gets replaced with the Hollywood slapstick sight gag kind of stuff. Which
I thought Tom Burt and Bill themselves were pretty true to form.
Mm-hmm.
Had to have the Cockney kind of accent and their constant, just bickering, hitting one another and being generally disgusting. Very, very different from the sort of non-verbal trolls of the Lord of the Rings trilogy films. But again,
those are mountain. I think that's the difference between the mountain trolls and
like cave trolls.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And Olog High or something. But yeah, like
trolls bred by Sauron and to be mindless machine.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't need them to talk. He just needs them to smash stuff. Whereas, these guys, I like the scene. I thought the way that the scene, things play out is different than in the book. But I feel like they almost had to do that because the way the book does it is very, again, kind of like fairy tale, where each dwarf comes out and then gets put in a sack and,
but at the, you had Gandalf going through and talking and pretending that he was
one of the trolls. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and
true.
this, Bilbo plays the part of the distractor, waiting for the sun come up, whereas in the books it's Gandalf who's playing them off each other by throwing his voice.
I've got parasites as big as my arm, I did like that it gave Bilbo something to do.
Yes.
That was, that was the first glimmer to Thorin of this guy is actually useful to have around.
His first kind of cleverness, his first kind of, because the Philly and Killy are they figure out the ponies are going missing, and they send
that look that they had was just hilarious.
Yeah,
and they kind of push Bilbo to go because he's their burglar, so he should be able to figure it out. And they run away as you do from trolls,
like you do.
But yeah, then I do like Bill, and again, it's been a while since I've read the book, but I do like Bilbo's how he how he tricks them into spending time until the sun can come up and Gandalf can break the rock and let the sun shine through, and he says they're infected. Yeah, I wouldn't eat that one. I really wouldn't. I would regret it.
Yeah, he's got worms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't have worms.
I like though that the one troll, like even though they're obviously slovenly and disgusting, he still says things like, that when they're cooking the dwarves, he's like, needs a sprinkling of sage. Like,
of course, that's just after the one snotted into the boiling pot and is like, oh, it tastes better now.
Yeah, a floater.
Yeah. But, like I said, then Gandalf comes in and is able to, stop the troll or, break the rock and let the sun shine on the trolls. And then he praises Bilbo too. So you get Gandalf, that's, I think, some respect in the dwarves' eyes too, is that you have this this mystical guy praising Bilbo. So, because the whole time they were betting that Bilbo would even show up, or against that Bilbo would show up, but Gandalf bet that he would show up. So,
and again, that is one of the things I thought was absolutely hilarious that they added in the movie. Just all the money being thrown in between the
dwarves.
Yeah. But yeah, and then after that scene, they find the troll horde, and we get the finding of these pretty famous weapons. We get Orcris for Thorin, Sting for Bilbo, and Glamdring for Gandalf, which we don't, we find out the names, at least of Glamdring and Orcris here when they make it to Rivendell. But what did y'all think of, I'm always a fan of seeing cool mystical swords and weapons and things. So it was I thought it was a cool moment. I don't remember in the book, how detailed that was, but I thought it was a cool moment. They finding these in the troll horde.
Yeah, it was about the same, but they took the troll horde and they went and buried it outside the troll horde to pick up later, which is how Bilbo came. That was all the money that Bilbo ended up bringing home was from that. They went and dug that up at the end.
Okay,
but it's pretty much the same, and they still did bury something to make a long-term deposit.
Yeah.
But that was cool. We did forget to talk about Radagast and showing up, because he's about to show up now, but he was in the movie beforehand, dealing with a bunch of spiders and the finding the. From my understanding, it was when he was in it like Greenwood when it was turning to Mirkwood.
That's the impression they gave.
Yeah.
And his hedgehog Sebastian.
Which and Sylvester McCoy, I saw an interview here. He's like, "Oh yeah, I get to act all by myself," and he was so excited to be part of this. And then who steals the show when he's in the theaters but this stupid hedgehog?
He has his horse, his hair-drawn sled too.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was kind of maybe like a reference to Tolkien writing the Christmas letters. Having a sleigh being drawn by creatures or something. I don't know if that's what that. Because I'm guessing that part is not in the book of the having like his sled drawn by hares.
He's only mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
You never see him.
Right. You never.
Okay.
Yeah. All that is is sort of the fill-in imagination stuff. What was going on with Radagast at this time, in which from the book's perspective, nobody cared.
Right. Yeah, because Radagast showed up in the Lord of the Rings book.
Yeah.
But not in the movie.
No, yeah, right. So they're like, well, we missed the chance to put him in the first movies. We'll put him here. Yeah.
Then but then they're chased. The orcs because they earlier in the movie they hear the orcs kind of hunting at night.
Yes, that was the first night.
And now they're catching up to them. And they have to go running, and Gandalf, of course, is trying to lead them to Rivendell because Thorin didn't want to go to Rivendell because he didn't want help from those elves who hated, who double crossed them back in Erebor because they wanted there's different story depending who you talk to and what happened with their double cross there.
But they're completely different elves.
Yeah. I know, right? I was thinking that. I'm like, yeah, it's like these are not the same elf. Never mind. It's like Hate doesn't need a reason. He's just gonna be like, I have a chip on my shoulder. That's why.
Yeah.
So.
There's, we get the exposition story about, the whole battle for Moria and everything. How much of that was like whole cloth, and how much of that was taken from somewhere in the Lost Tales or the?
It's in the appendices on Durin's Folk, where it describes pretty in depth the Battle of Azanambalzar, which is the battle at the Gates of Moria. The only real major difference, there's two main differences. One, King Thror was dead long before the battle. In fact, the battle happens because Azog murders Thror, and then there's a big battle where Thrain and Thorin lead dwarves from all 7 nations in this huge battle. And the only other major difference is that Azog dies at the end of that battle. Yep. He's killed by Dane Ironfoot.
Yes.
And so he's not supposed to be alive at this time period. It's supposed to be his son, Bolg. But I guess I was bothered by that when I first saw the movie, but now I'm just kind of like, Azog makes kind of a cool villain. So
yeah,
I don't have much of a problem.
Just kind of with all the other side quests, trying to push it along. I mean, not that it needed to be pushed along in the book, but it is what it is.
The thing of him having the oak branch shield is in the appendices, and that's why he's called Oaken Shield.
Yes. Actually, that was one thing. My son came down halfway through the movie and was like, because it was, of course, at the end, when he's walking down the tree, why does he have wood on his arm?
Yeah.
It's like really cool that you noticed that. Let me explain that to you.
Yeah, but then they managed to make it to Rivendell, and Gandalf is trying to get Thorin to let Elrond help them because he can read this map that they have, which no one else, not many people in Middle Earth can read. But Thorin, of course, is reluctant. And there's, like we were saying earlier, where they have their little dinner with the elves, and Killy kind of gets his first indication that he has a crush on elves, apparently.
Yep. He winks at an elf playing the harp, and then he talks about how one elf looks nice, but then realizes it was a boy elf.
Well, he doesn't realize that he.
It was pointed out to him. Yes.
Yeah. Dwalin tells him, or I think it's Dwalin.
That must have been in the extended cut. I didn't.
Maybe it was that. Yeah. And so they're like, okay, and that's like our running, our contractual reference in this podcast that we reference all the time. But that's kind of where I don't know if it wasn't in the theatrical, or if it was, I could see how they were kind of maybe trying to seed that idea, but as dumb as it was,
and they probably should have just cut it all. But
yeah, but
yes.
What did y'all think of? Aside from that, what did y'all think of seeing Rivendell here? And I thought it was kind of cool. We get to see Bilbo kind of wandering around and seeing, he got to see the shards of Narsil and the ring being cut from Sauron. We see that. I think
that's one of the extended scenes.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it was a really cool. Yeah, I think that was one that they should have definitely kept in, because it was a good foreshadowing and a good callback to what obviously was already done. But I put this quote in here. Maybe I'll just do it now. But when Gandalf was talking to Galadriel, I think probably the best quote from the movie, I would say, is Galadriel asks, "Why the halfling?" And Gandalf says, "I don't know. Saruman believes it is only great power that can hold evil in check, but that is not what I have found. I have found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. Why Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps it is because I am afraid, and he gives me courage." And which is I think is very, very Tolkien. It's not in the book, but that is such a Tolkien thing to say, and to like, that's the essence of Tolkien. That's the essence of kind of our Catholicism. And this is shortly after, mind you, that Gandalf gives Bilbo a sword and says, I hope you never have to use it, but if you do, remember this: true courage is about knowing not when to take a life, but when to spare one. And it's just like he's giving this advice on courage and taking that courage from Bilbo too. Like, I find that it just worked very well and very beautifully.
That first quote that you read, Rob, is so Tolkien that I see it quoted as Tolkien on the internet all the time. I see people take those lines from the movie and then put J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm like, yeah, he never wrote that, but it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and of course we know that Gandalf learned how not to learn this lesson from Tom Bombadil in Rings of Power, when he learns, he doesn't want to kill the Dark Wizard. So
Yeah.
just trying to give you some more flames across your face, Bat.
I appreciate that. He's not Gandalf. He can't be Gandalf.
in denial.
Yeah. I liked how, so you have Galadriel and Gandalf.
Elrond.
Yeah. Talking to each other's minds, right? And I think a lot of Lord of the Rings fans will remember, yeah, she was able to talk into the minds of other people, but what's going on there is kind of, they're both ring bearers, right? And we know they're ring bearers.
And she doesn't do that in the Rings of Power.
Right.
That's right.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. Anyway. But, and so is Elrond. So there's kind of, it's interesting. You have this meeting of the White Council, right? And you have the four of them there, but one of them can only hear the spoken words. He can't, and Saruman's kind of left out from the secret conversations going on. I wonder if Elrond was listening in to Galadriel and Gandalf's side conversation.
And this, actually, my wife looked at me when we were watching this. She goes, is this when Saruman starts being corrupted? This, like, at what point does he start being corrupted? And I think this was starting to be the inkling towards it of, ooh, there's just another power. I don't know. That's a throwaway for next movie there.
In the movie universe, I think definitely this is kind of his, we first get those inklings that Saruman is not quite on the level. He just denies everything.
Yeah.
Although as we'll see in another movie, he has some action scenes fighting against Sauron. So
yes. Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, he always was trying to be against Sauron.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. True. Pretend to work for him and be like, I'm really trying to make a ring of power for myself. And then we get the gag about mushrooms, Radagast's excessive consumption of mushrooms. I'm like, yeah. Okay, it's probably not the silliest line Christopher Lee's ever had to say. There's been a lot of silly movies, but it was just so strange anyway. But.
Yeah. Well, it harkens back to his comments about Gandalf's, the pipe weed of the hobbits stolen Gandalf's mind.
Yeah.
So he's always pointing to. It's interesting. He points to these physical things that could be corrupting influences on the other wizards, where he's being corrupted by the spiritual influence of Sauron through the Palantir. And it's just this. I'm going to throw shade on you, but like my corruption is way worse.
Right. Right, but yeah, it's like people are like that, It's
It's I mean, how many times is it? You have it that bad. Well, I have it this much badder. Like, we do that sort of to ourselves, but I think in a sense, I could see him going from this meeting and going right to the Palantir and being like, all right, what's going on?
Yeah. Looking in that thing.
And they like we were talking in, Galadriel and Gandalf are talking because he has the blade of Angmar. which of course is the Witch King of Angmar, leader.
Right.
Of
Yeah. Lore snafu.
Yeah.
And where,
Yeah.
how does that get back to the Witch King and Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. Well, and also they mention that like he was alive when he was buried with it. I'm like, when he was king of Angmar, he was not alive. He was already an undead wraith. I'm like, they completely botched that. Like,
Yeah.
bit
Well,
of
and
the
then-
lore, but
And then Saruman as well. He starts throwing shade at Thorin, and he talks about how there's madness in his blood, and there's 4 of the rings were consumed by dragons, 2 were taken by Sauron, 1 ring disappeared with Thrain, and that it's like, okay, well, isn't that where the madness came from?
right. Like as we see in the Rings of Power, dwarf rings make you kind of insane and greedy for gold.
But Elrond does agree to read the map for them, and they find out that the runes are on the map are moon runes and can only be read by the light of a moon at the time they were written.
Just happened to be the same exact moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the only lazy writing we get Tolkien in the entirety, because he was so meticulous about going back and changing things and fixing things. Oh, the weather wouldn't have been like this. I mean, but then we get this, which is like, really? That is one heck of a coincidence.
Well, he was going to rewrite The Hobbit wholesale. He might have changed that if he had finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I wonder,
it's fun.
just to try to headcanon it, maybe it was Elrond who initially put those in there.
Oh, like he wrote them?
Yeah.
And we'll see that in Rings of Power season 5.
You bet.
No, that's I can see that happening.
Yes.
now.
Can't you see it? Yeah.
What are you writing there? Nothing. Don't worry about it. It's just a map.
Yeah,
I'm using the light of this moon.
Yeah, I think we reverse the scenes. I think the moon rune scene happens before the council scene.
Yes.
Yes.
But because then they
Those
to move
are gone.
along the company sneaks away, or they're sent away by Gandalf during that council. So because Elrond doesn't want them to go and wake up the dragon, or doesn't want to go and risk waking up the dragon, because he knows that's probably going to happen, and he knows the dwarves are not going to be quiet, and are not going to. Although it's really, I guess, Bilbo that wakes up the dragon more so, but
Somebody's got to wake the dragon up.
It's a darn thrush.
Yeah.
Well, but but then the really wakes up when Bilbo goes in. But anyway, that's the
Made
next
the hat
movie.
for the cat. The bird keeps doing it.
But yeah, then we kind of get them moving along, and they're going through the mountains, and I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about things, but we get to the Goblin Town scene, which before that, I do really like the scene of, I forget which elf it is. I think it's Oin, or it could be Gloin. I don't remember, where Bilbo's, about to leave and go home. And
I think it's Beaufort.
kind of, is it Beaufort?
Yeah, it's
I thought it
Beaufort.
was-
Yeah, it's Beaufort.
Where he says, well, I'm talking about where Bilbo says, y'all don't have a home.
Yep.
Y'all were, okay, that's Beaufort. Okay.
Yeah, so Beaufort stops him because Bilbo was about to just leave. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done. Let's get out of here. And Beaufort was like, "Hey, you can't. Like, we need you to do it." And that's when the trap is activated and they fall through the floor.
Black crack.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I like what Beaufort says, that even though Bilbo was kind of being mean to them, he says, Beaufort says, "I wish you all the luck in the world."
Yeah.
Which I think
That's nice.
is mirrored as we get in a little bit. I have the quote that I want to say, but I'll save it till we get there. But yeah, then
because Bilbo makes that snafu. He says, you don't know, you don't understand. Like, you don't have a place. I have a place. You don't. And then he realizes, oh,
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
I
he makes
shouldn't
up for
said
that at
that.
the end of the movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
But just to, because we're getting along on time here. What did y'all just kind of quickly think of? I think probably the Gollum scene is kind of a bigger focus, but briefly, what did y'all think of the Goblin Town scene?
the book follows Bilbo, right? So you don't get very much of what's going on. I really enjoyed everything. Like this, like if you were to ask what does Goblin Town look like, that's what it looks like. And I didn't mind the Goblin King being what he was. He was kind of funny, to be honest. I kind of like Gandalf's coming, and I enjoyed the action chase sequence that we got through Goblin Town and the craziness that it was. So I everything about this whole sequence, both parts of it, both the Goblin Town piece and the Golem piece, I think were very expertly done. I think they sort of took what they could from, the Peter Jackson films and from the source material, and they made something that was woven in very well with what the source material would have given us.
There is one little thing that this might be just me and my brother, but we think it's hilarious every time we watch this movie. One of our favorite little moments is the little messenger goblin in the chair, in the little bucket. He has like no legs basically, and he's like in this little bucket, and he's like, send word to the pale orc. And when he goes on his little like ski lift bucket, he's just like and it's like that's amazing. I love that. It cracks me up every single time. He's living his best life, like
but to kind of probably the more important scene, or the one y'all might have the most to talk about, is the Gollum scene. So what did y'all think of how this was portrayed? And we of course get Andy Serkis back as Gollum, very similar portrayal. But what did y'all think of that scene?
It was beautiful and amazing, and I loved it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they used the dialogue almost straight out of the book, right? And I think they changed up a couple things, but for the most part, I think it was like 3 rounds. I think they use all the same rhymes. I think Golem.
They left out some stuff. Riddles. A few.
Yeah, they went a little bit longer in the book, but
yeah, I think they picked some of the best riddles.
Yes,
right
for this. Yeah, so
and I think that's one of the things this movie does really well is use the dialogue from the books, or use the verbiage from the books. It doesn't always do it, right? Obviously, but it very much showed in this part of the book. Like, how do you make a good film about Jesus Christ? Well, just use the gospel. Like, you don't need to add a whole lot. I mean, you can make a good film, but you don't have to. And I think that's what they did here. They just took the source material and they turned it into, visual format.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it was portrayed, pretty well. And I'm okay with the making edits and additions and things like that, if it makes sense for the movie. And this, I think, is one where they did portray it really well. But the riddle scene, and then, it's where we see Gollum's, life get spared, which is a lesson that Bilbo will pass on. Well, that Gandalf kind of passed to Bilbo, and that that Bilbo and Gandalf kind of passed to Frodo, because they wouldn't have been able to destroy the ring without Gollum. Like, no one could resist it enough to actually throw it in. They needed, the will of Iluvatar to, send the gust of wind to blow Gollum into the cracks of doom in the end. So, yeah, and then we, then we get the reuniting after, the dwarves are escaping and get out into the light, and then Bilbo as well, and we see Gollum kind of looking sad and dejected, and as Bilbo's running, he actually, and I don't know if it's said in the book, if he like kind of kicks him in the face as he's like jumping out of the way, but
like I guess my biggest thing with all that was that, like, he had his buttons broken because he was trying to get away from Gollum, but in the book he was actually just trying to get out the back door.
Right. Buttons on the doorstep.
And he was on the doorstep, and then the goblins were all over the mountain still, and so they replaced the goblins with the orcs coming in.
Yeah.
Right. they made goblins and orcs two kind of different species in this movie, which I thought was a neat way to reconcile why there's two different names in the source material. I like that the goblins are like these pygmy, very vermin, rat-like subspecies of orcs. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, the elves that saw the light of the trees and the elves that didn't. Except for orcs. So
except they're orcs,
the orcs that saw the darkness of Mordor and
or like
Angband or whatever.
Yeah. But it does come across like, Bilbo has that. Honestly, it's almost like the baby Hitler problem. Like, do I kill? do I do this now or do I do it later? But obviously, making the right choice is sparing a life. It takes a lot of courage, and that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, and then they're reunited, and the dwarves, they don't see Bilbo yet because he still has the ring on, and as they're coming out of the mountain, they start saying, "Oh, he's gone, he left us," and then he reveals himself that he's there. And this, I think, the quote from Gandalf earlier was a really good one, but I also really like this one too, that I'm going to read, because Thorin asks Bilbo why he came back, and Thorin says, "It matters. I want to know, why did you come back?" And Bilbo says, "Look, I know you doubt me. I know you always have. And you're right. I often think of Bag End. I miss my books, and my armchair, and my garden. See, that's where I belong. That's home. That's why I come back. Because you don't have one, a home. It was taken from you, but I will help you take it back if I can." And then, I know it's not part of the same scene, but a little bit later, because they're interrupted by Azog and the orcs, and they have to get saved by eagles. But when they're kind of safe, you have a scene of Thorin kind of saying, like almost insulting Bilbo, of saying, you were, we never thought you would be, you could do this. You should have stayed home, and this and that. And then Thorin says, "Never have I been more wrong," and brings him in for the big man hug, which I thought, that those were really powerful scenes for me. But I don't know what y'all thought of that, I know we're kind of getting close to time, so I've kind of glossed over some things, but what did y'all think of kind of that ending of the movie? And then which they see the mountain, and then we see the thrush, and then the dragon's eye opens. So what did y'all think of that whole final sequence of the movie?
Bilbo's like, "The worst is behind us."
Nope.
Great. No.
Well, Dory gets blamed in the movie of like, "Hey, you were supposed to be watching him," because in the book, Dory was actually carrying Bilbo on his back when he fell into to go meet Gollum, and it was really nice, just that we're kind of understanding. And then obviously they get chased by the orcs to a precipice of trees, and you get this fantastically awesome scene of Gandalf speaking to butterflies, apparently, and but then creating pine cone firework type things and creating fire everywhere, and it was a beautiful blaze of scene. And then Bilbo steps up and goes and does what he needs to do just so that Thorin doesn't die. And I think that was a very poignant thing that they chose to do. I don't think that was in the movie.
In the book?
Yeah, in the book.
What was in the book, the fire pine cones was part of the book, but they were being chased by simply wolves or wargs, werewolves. It's
war. Yeah.
It wasn't goblin riding on them or orcs or anything, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong. But that was the primary thing that they were doing, and Gandalf was doing that. But there wasn't this sort of grudge match kind of thing going on between Thorin and one of the orcs.
Right.
So there was no Thorin in danger, which then required Bilbo to go get him.
Right.
I remember when the movie came out, I remember there was some fan angst about how in the book, the first time Bilbo uses his sword in anger is against one of the spiders, which is why it's named Sting.
Yeah,
he uses it several times in this movie. I don't have too much of a problem with it, but
because he kills a warg with it.
Yeah,
and he couldn't get it out.
It didn't work.
And didn't work. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was again, adding Asgog into this and doing what they did to move the plot along. I think, as Patrick said at the beginning, they wove it in very well. And having Bilbo having that kind of heroic moment, even though he failed in a sense, he showed everybody like, hey, I'm in it. Let's do this thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because throughout there is much more of a Bilbo can't hack it feeling in the movie than there is in the book. Right. By the time they're here, when they realize they've lost Bilbo, it's about, oh no, what happened to Bilbo? Well, we've got to save him, or it's not this. Let's everybody throw down and call. Well, of course he went back to his homeland and he abandoned us and da da da. That's much more prevalent in the movie, but it's used as a hook for this, kind of setting up Bilbo as one of the company, or through him. Helping Thorin, trying to help Thorin.
Yeah.
And then you get your Deus Machina sequels.
Yeah. Yes. And in the book, it was the goblin setting fire to the trees, actually.
Yeah.
Gandalf didn't have his pinecone fire nades at all. As I coined them fire nades because they're grenades, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I call a grenade joke. It goes off later.
Right,
See?
Well done, Rob.
Well, as we wrap up, any final thoughts on this movie?
I can't say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Good job.
What's the opposite of optimistic? Dreading? I'm unconsciously dreading the next one.
Yeah.
Pessimistic.
Quietly pessimistic.
I mean, obviously, this movie, like I said, this was it was probably my second favorite of all the Lord of the Rings movies so far. It really is. Maybe third. It's up there, but moving forward here, we're gonna see it definitely take a downwards turn in terms of deviation from the book, in terms of things that could be done a lot better, but overall, it's still Lord of the Rings, and it's still awesome. Well,
yeah,
The Hobbit, and it's still awesome.
Yeah, it's still got the grandiose, wide view, beautiful vista shots. It's still got all of the work that goes into making the characters look, authentic. Again, authentically Tolkien, but all of the costuming work and all of the work that goes into making the music work correctly, because you have this sort of Hobbit, Misty Mountain theme that then gets interwoven with the Rings theme, that gets interwoven with the overarching Lord of the Rings theme at the appropriate times when it's needed. All very well done. The cinematography, the art direction, it's all pretty fantastic. Like it's just like Rings of Power. It was one of the things I had no qualm. There was no problems with that.
Right. Great.
That department did a great job.
One thing I didn't realize until I was looking at the special features, because my son wanted to know how they did the thunder battle scene with the rock giants. So we watched the special features and how they did that. But one thing I didn't realize is that Andy Serkis was actually the director of the second unit. So
really,
he was, not the director, but he was the director of the second unit. So looking forward into the Hunt for Gollum, him directing this is like, oh yeah, he's got this totally. Like this is going to be awesome.
And he's had a few other directorial credits under his belt by now, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we can be cautiously optimistic about the Hunt for Gollum. And I think is it like December 2027 or May 2027, something like that. But any other final thoughts, Pat, or anyone else?
Nope.
All right.
This was a good one.
Well, we do have a little bit of feedback that we'll get into. So just two pieces, I think. So on our part 3 of Turin, we had Ellidir, on the Tolkien film, we had Ellidir say, "I don't believe in AI, but I would be very interested in hearing an AI version of C.S. Lewis say, I'm here to talk to you about the Inklings Initiative." So
Yes.
So Pat wasn't there for that one, so I don't know. Hopefully you listen to the podcast, Pat. And
I do, in fact, listen to the podcast.
If you have feedback for us, Pat, let us know. Give us live feedback sometime on that.
I've got some notes.
And then on it was kind of a combo, but on Turin Part 3 and Tolkien, we had Tammy say, "I've been crazy busy lately and trying to catch up on podcasts, but the last 2 are great as usual. Huge bravo to Pat for his epic poem wrapping up the Turin saga. Exemplary."
Oh,
and then a shout out, she said, "And well done joining the podcast crew, Rob Leonardi." So
thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love being on this, man.
All right. Well, I think that is it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle Earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this show possible, including Vincent B., Catalina U., David C., Stephen B., and Daniel S. Their generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle Earth and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them at sqpn.com/give. Now I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think about the first Hobbit film? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving us a comment on YouTube, or by visiting our channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And once again, we want to wish you a happy Hobbit Day. If you celebrated it in any special way, either by watching this movie or doing something else Tolkien related, let us know as well. And then continue to join us next time for another episode discussing the world of Middle Earth. So until then, thank you, Thomas Salerno, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle Earth.
Thank you, Jeff. And look, we only went half as long as this movie. So.
And Rob Leonardi, thank you as well.
Thank you very much. When you are finished, if there are holes, send them down the hall to roll, because that's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
And Patrick Mason, thank you too.
Oh, well, goblins cough and goblins beat and goblins laugh and goblins bleat. Batter, jabber, whip, and hammer, ho. Down you go, my lads, down you go.
And I don't have a song lyric to say, but I'm Jeff Haecker. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle Earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Technology. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/technology.